Welcome to the Fantasy Live Show, Week 16 game-by-game recap edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great, and hopefully it was for your fantasy team as well. If not, 364 more days to get ready for next year. As always, on this Sunday evening edition of the show, I'm joined by the one, the only Dwain, the Rock McFarland. And Dwain, players who scored 26 plus PPR points today as expected: Chris Olave, Chase Brown, Ashton Genty, Justin Herbert, Jalen Warren, and Parker Washington, just like we predicted, man.
Just like we predicted. And the guys we've been depending on all year with complete bombs: Josh Allen, Trey McBride, Amon-Ra St. Brown, nearly got the touchdown at the end, but it got called back. So yeah, man, a very interesting week, and we have one more week to go.
One more week. So again, hopefully you guys made it through. If you did, brush off those shoulders. We got another matchup to win. Accordingly, we're going through all 14 games that have already happened, giving you a scholar all the utilization tidbits you need to know to get ready for week 17. And with that, Dwain, let's rewind the clocks back to maybe the game of the year. The Seahawks took down the Rams 38-37 in OT last Thursday night. LA did cover as 1.5-point dogs over cash, obviously with ease at 42.5. So really just pick a player, and there's a good chance they racked up a lot of fantasy points. Sam Darnold, 270 yards and a pair of scores. I saw Jackson Smith and the Jigba wind up going for 96 yards and a touchdown, slow start. And Kenneth Walker, 25.4 PPR points, his most of the season, and just the second time he's even cleared 15 since week 3. So Seahawks offense, Dwain, in a tough test, man, certainly cleared that bar.
Yeah, they looked really good. The Seahawks have been a good team for most of the year. Have been a little bit up and down though as an offense, and we've definitely seen Darnold in some of these big moments really kind of turn into a pumpkin, if you will. And it was nice to see him. It looked like it might happen. It looked like that might be the case in this game, but he did turn it around. He had the 2 interceptions, but he ends up finishing the night with 270 passing yards, 7.9 yards per attempt, and the 2 passing touchdowns. The backfield's really interesting, because we did get the fantasy points this week: 25.4 for Walker. You got 15.4 for Charbonnet, but it was really still the same. 9 carries for each guy. That's really not enough. 3 targets for Walker, 4 targets for Sharbs. Sharbs ends up getting the rushing touchdown that saves his night, really. And then Walker, obviously, if you guys were watching him, he just went beast mode. Walker looked fantastic. But yeah, wish I could say that it was because the team that's so committed to the run that this equals 15 rushing attempts for each guy. No, it didn't. It was 9 for each one, and they just happened to do a lot with it. And a tough matchup, like you mentioned.
Of course, Sherman did find the end zone himself. There's been a funny TikTok video going along where someone basically was playing Madden, and they just have Kenneth Walker running all the way down to like the 3-yard line, takes a dive, and then, of course, Charbonnet comes in and scores a touchdown. Does tend to be quite realistic when you look at it. Also, shout out to Rashid Shaheed for the punt return touchdown, and Cooper Kupp managed to clear some of the under-the-radar, agent, just like a slander going his way. Lost a fumble, but did haul in a big catch in overtime, and that was, again, a lovely throw from Sam Darnold. So good stuff there from the Seahawks. They'll take on the Cardinals here in Week 17. I'm sure we will once again be expecting them to score plenty of points. Meanwhile, for the Rams, 457 yards and 3 touchdowns for Matthew Stafford, the bulk of which went to none other than Puka Nacua. Caught 12 of 16 targets for 225 yards and a pair of scores. Honestly, could have even been a bigger game. Got tackled at the 1-yard line early and then got overshot in a rare miss from Stafford on what could have been an additional 30-yard touchdown. But 46.5 PPR points, Dwain. Again, we mentioned some of the more wild things that happened on Sunday, but at least the world made a lot of sense last Thursday.
Yeah, look, 157 air yards in this game. You mentioned the 46.5 fantasy points. He had a 98 utilization score, 16 targets, Ian. And if we look at these last 2 games with basically Adams picking up the injury, which it was later in the game last week, he's averaged 37.2 fantasy points with 13.5 targets, 150 air yards per game. Puka Nacua, good at football. Like I don't think I have anything else really to add. I will say real quickly, because I know some folks were disappointed with Colby Parkinson. And we talked about the potential that it was a trap with Parkinson, but with Adams out and really Parkinson leading the tight end room, which he did again in. He had a 71% route participation rate. Terrence Ferguson did tie him, but it wasn't like he wasn't in a role. He was out there. He just didn't get as many targets, and he dropped a couple of opportunities, had some things not go his way. So we'll keep an eye on what's up with Tyler Higbee, but I still think Parkinson, borderline tight end 1 territory. Like if I told you Stafford was going to throw for 350 yards, you have no Devontae Adams, you think Colby Parkinson's probably going to score a touchdown or something.
Yeah, it's just, unfortunate 1 week sample, and the 1 week sample happens to be the most important week of our fantasy season, at least to this point. So I know the Colby dud sucks everyone. Obviously, Terrence Ferguson found the end zone instead, even had a second potential touchdown nullified. So also saw Blake Corum score another touchdown. And while we did not see Kyron Williams go off in this one, guys, since week 12 in terms of PPR points per game, Kyron is the RB11, Blake Corum the RB14. So the Rams have legit been establishing multiple top 15 running backs in fantasy for the better part of last month. Gotta love that run game. Dwayne, did we see any wide receivers really step up with Devontae Adams out, because he is expecting to miss week 17 with the hamstring injury as well?
No, I mean, Mumfield is the wide receiver too, but even he's not in a full-time role. So I really don't think there's anything that we can trust here, to be honest. Like I
Okay.
especially in a huge game like the one we have coming. Mumfield was out there with a 51% route participation. Then you had Xavier Smith behind him, then Whittington, and then Atwell, then Whittington. But those guys are all it's too jumbled.
Rams will be taking on the Falcons on Monday Night Football. So again, McVay not expecting Adams back. Maybe, just maybe, there's a fantasy football miracle waiting for us though, with the extra time off. Moving ahead to some Saturday action, we had the Eagles take down the Commanders 29-18. Philly did cover as 7-point favorites. Over cash here of 43.5. Shout out to the Eagles, man. This was again one of those complete games that we've seen from them on a couple occasions this year, but just rarely, in 3 or 4 straight games in a row. So Jalen Hurts, 22 for 30, 185 yards and 2 scores. Also, Saquon Barkley have another good game, 132 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He has now had 18, 17, and again, yet last Saturday, 21 PPR points in his last 3 games. So good to see him coming on strong. Same thing with A.J. Brown, 9 catches for 95 yards. He has had double-digit targets in 5 of his last 6 games since openly complaining about his job on Twitch. Just to show everyone, if you do have a problem in life, go to social media to really hash that out. Even Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert managed to score a touchdown. So just business as usual, and business was booming, Dwayne.
Yeah. Nothing to add, man. The Eagles look good. It's we know who's getting the ball here. It's going to be AJ Brown, it's going to be Smith, it's going to be Barkley, it's going to be Goddard. Everything is really the same as what we've seen over the last several weeks.
Eagles against the Bills in week 17. Get your popcorn ready for that one. That will be in Buffalo, so it could be of the snowy variety. Meanwhile, with the Commanders, Chris Rodriguez and Bill Krosky-Merritt each found the end zone, but it sure seemed like they were still stuck in a committee of sorts, Dwayne.
This is the second game where we've had a healthy Rodriguez, though, that he's cleared 50% of the snaps. He had 55% and he had 60% of the rushing attempts. So it really was C-Rod as the RB1 in this game. And so that's the second time we've seen that. I don't know how excited we can get about it, because we don't really know if it's going to be Josh Johnson or if it's going to be Marcus Mariota at quarterback this next game. So we'll see what happens with that. But it does look like C-Rod is the lead back, and then the other 2 guys rotating in. So this last week, 24% of the snaps to McNichols, 22% to Merritt. Merritt is the number 2 back on the ground. McNichols doing the thing in the air. But C-Rod, man, 60% of the attempts. It's not too bad. Just wish it was a better offense.
Mariota, as Dwayne mentioned, dealing with the right hand and quad injuries. He is considered day-to-day. It will be 39-year-old journeyman, to put it lightly, Josh Johnson, if not. So Terry McLaurin, 53 scoreless yards. Deebo Samuel, 35 scoreless yards. They are playing the Cowboys next week, but again, if it is going to be Josh Johnson under center, it's going to be tough to be too excited about anyone involved. Saturday Night Football, we had the Bears take down the Packers in a thriller, at least for the last 20 or so minutes of the game. 22-16, Chicago did cover and win as 1.5-point home faves. Underdid cash, though, at 45.5. Truly, again, nails throws down the stretch from Caleb Williams, Iceman. That's amazing. The fourth quarter comebacks are great. But, if Romeo Dobbs didn't do his best Brandon Bostic impression, the Packers go home with, a comfortable win. But he did not. So, just ended up being a situation where Caleb went on and found Jade Walker in the back of the end zone on a great throw off his back foot on 4th and ball game with about 20 seconds left. And then had an amazing 46-yard game-winning touchdown of DJ Moore. That will probably be on the short list of best throws of the year. So 250-2 for Caleb. And as we know, in Fantasyland, Dwayne, style points, or getting your points in the first quarter or fourth quarter, they all count the same in our stat book.
Yeah, I mean, Williams, it was a struggle early in the game, but he did get it going late when he needed to, so you just have to give him credit. As far as the wide receiver room, when we look at DJ Moore, 21.9 fantasy points in this one, Ian, 95% route participation, 25% target share, so 7 targets, had 1 end zone target. You guys all saw that one. It was a beautiful catch for a touchdown, deep over the shoulder catch. He had 123 air yards, and the big thing with DJ Moore, and we talked about it, like the targets haven't been consistent even in these games when other people are hurt, but he is getting targets targets down the field, specifically with his quarterback just trusting him to come down with it, in the end zone. So I think those are positives for Moore. We'll see what happens with Burden if we get him back. Odunze, feel like it's probably a multi-week injury for him. We'll wait and see. I know they haven't officially said he's out, but it felt like probably more than 1 week for him. So we'll see what happens if both those guys were to be out again. Ian, I know we would have DJ Moore in that wide receiver 3 territory, potentially even a little higher.
Again, I know it hasn't been the most consistent stretch for DJ Moore this year, but starting to put together some big weeks and at least proving that he's still got plenty of good football that he is capable of playing. Meanwhile, DeAndre Swift, unfortunately, just only had 9 PPR points in this one, playing through a groin injury, had his second highest scoring game of the year in week 15, second lowest scoring game in week 16. So unfortunately, sometimes that is just the way the cookie crumbles. Also got an unfortunate dub from Colston Loveland, Dwain, someone who really was being hyped up with those wide receivers out. I take it he still is very much involved in the fairly evenly split committee with Cole Kmet.
He actually led the way with an 82% route participation rate. Funny how this works, right? Hey, if you would have told me,
makes me feel so much better, Dwain.
Well, if you would have told me he was going to have an 80% route participation rate and those two guys are out, like I would have thought Colson Loveland would have been a must-start tight end because he's been playing good, here lately. So I get it. Only 6 PPR points, and if you played him, that maybe got you bounced. But look, all I can do is report what's happening, and he did have a full-time role. So again, we'll see what happens with these receivers, and they did shorten things down a little bit too, Ian. So not having the other receivers, that leads a little bit more to tight end stuff, that kind of thing. So that also helped Loveland.
Bears will be at the 49ers on Sunday Night Football next week. Again, that is a very banged up front seven. So hopefully we see a more complete 60-minute offensive effort from everyone involved in Chicago. Meanwhile, for the Packers, just 16 points in a game that they never punted. Really was, one bad turnover or just turnover on downs, if you will, deep in Chicago territory all game long. Unfortunately, it was not Jordan Love doing so for a lot of the game. Actually, Malik Willis had to step up, and step up he did, man. 121 passing yards on 9 of 11 passing, included a dime to Romeo Doubs for the Packers' only touchdown. Also chipped in 44 rushing yards. So with the concussion that Jordan Love suffered, Dwain, we could get Malik Willis, although he apparently now has a shoulder injury that he's dealing with as well. So do you see which shoulder it was? I mean, they are playing on Saturday night.
His throwing arm.
Oh, great. So,
yeah, it was a throwing arm. So we'll just have to keep an eye on practice. But I think the main takeaway is, guys, we'll keep track on that. But I think kind of where you're heading with this, Ian, is Malik Willis is one of these guys that, because he's the dual threat quarterback, he could be a low end QB1. And he has upside. So we'll keep an eye on it. He did handle, if you go back and look at this game, he had 3 design rushing attempts and 4 scrambles, guys. And that's with Jordan Love playing early in the game. The dude had 7 carries. So, he could end up with 10 in a full game. And then if he comes up with 200 yards passing and 2 passing touchdowns, plus that rushing production, it can lead to good things. And we like the Packers offense.
Obviously, would be a downgrade for the wide receivers involved. Not because Malik Willis isn't capable of completing a forward pass, but we just have seen them go very, very run heavy when he's been under center and limited action over the last 2 years. Speaking of that run game, Dwain, obviously a dud for Josh Jacobs, and did not seem like he was in his usual role. Wasn't even out there for overtime. So how bad was the pitch count for Jacobs?
They started off really feeding him, and then I guess maybe he tweaked his knee or something and just kind of told him he needed to slow it down, because early in the first quarter, he was out there, I was listening to it because we were driving back from Houston, and it was over those first 2 drives, it was Jacobs the whole way. So I went and checked it when I got home, and yeah, it was. But later in the game, they really did have to rotate over to Wilson. So 39% snap shares where Jacobs finished, 46% to Wilson. You had 21% going to Chris Brooks. So he was handling some of the passing down work, but Wilson was obviously the main guy handling the workload that Jacobs was not getting. So going to be really interesting to see what the practice reports look like this week. If we get DMP again, obviously we know we can't rule him out because we've seen that twice now and he still played. But after not being able to finish this game and then seeing that, man, if Jacobs were to be out, I think Wilson would be high-end running back too.
Yeah, and honestly, even if Jacobs is playing and Willis is playing, we saw last year, I'm looking at it right now, in those games where we actually did have Willis under center, we were still seeing Wilson actually find his way to 10 or 12 touches in those. So could be a situation where, if Jacobs is active, we're not going to be treating Emmanuel Wilson as his top 10 player or anything like that. But it could be Kyron and Blake Corum-esque, where all of a sudden we are looking at a legitimate flex option. So definitely, guys, by all means, make sure you definitely keep Emmanuel Wilson on that bench, regardless of if you think Josh Jacobs is healthy and good to go, because again, it really does seem like a day-to-day issue for him. So again, Packers against the Ravens here next Saturday night. That should be a fun one. Moving on to some Sunday action. We had the Bills take down the Browns 23-20. Cleveland did cover as 10.5-point dogs, over cashed at 41.5. So James Cook, Dwain, continuing to put his fantasy managers on his back and making a decent enough case now for Offensive Player of the Year. 117 yards and a pair of touchdowns. And man, this dude is just so freaking explosive in the open field. Unfortunately, that was really the only nice thing that you could smile about while watching this Bills offense. Just 130 passing yards from Josh Allen, 17 rushing yards, no touchdowns. You add it all together, a not so nice 6.9 fantasy points. That is his fewest in a full start since his rookie season. So Dawson Knox dropped a touchdown out there. Oftentimes we see Josh Allen score the sort of touchdowns that, Ty Johnson did from the 2 or 3 yard line. But yeah, kind of sucks to get this in week 16, Dwayne.
Yeah, I mean, look, James Cook's doing his thing, but everybody else for the Bills, they're also still just doing their thing besides Josh Allen. Obviously, that was an outlier bad performance for him. But there's really nothing to say here. Everything's still the same. It's a complete jumbled up mess for the receivers. The tight ends are still splitting time. You got the two backs behind Cook still doing the same thing. So it's just you're either starting James Cook, you're starting Josh Allen, and no one else on this offense. Like, that's just the way it is.
And I know everyone's, piling on Brandon Beane, and I think he probably does deserve some blame for the state of the wide receiver room right now. But it's like, all right, they've made this run game, under center, and it is awesome, man. Everything James Cook is doing, he is such a weapon. But let's just see them hopefully, in 2026 and beyond, start building this wide receiver room back up, because I just hate to see the MVP, one of the most talented passers that we see out there, again, just being limited to such a poor performance. So did have x-rays on his foot at halftime. I'm talking about Josh Allen. They came back negative. So hopefully nothing more to come from that. But yeah, even Dalton Kincaid, guys, no freaking catches here on just one target. Cannot be trusting him at all right now. So it will be the Bills versus the Eagles here in week 17. Hopefully we do see Cook and Josh Allen doing their things for fantasy managers lucky enough to advance. Meanwhile, for the Browns, 2 more touchdowns for Harold Fannin. Now, one of them was a fullback dive from the one. Another one was just a kind of short play action. So ran a little bit lucky there. Only got 6 targets. But hey, Dwayne, I guess good players get put in good positions, and that's what we have for Harold Fannin.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Fannin is we've seen the carries down inside the 5 already this season. So it's not like it was just complete luck. It's something they've been doing with him. He happened to get it whenever he needed it there. Gives you 19.5 PPR points a day. I think he's a top 6 tight end the rest of the way, the same way that we've been treating him. 22% of the targets. Nothing else to really speak of with the wide receiver room here, Ian. We don't really want to mess with any of it. Jerry Jeudy was the wide receiver 2 in routes, but wide receiver 2 in routes for the Browns is not wide receiver 2 in your heart and fantasy. It's like wide receiver 10. So looking at the backfield is the most interesting thing. We had Judkins go down with a broken leg and an ankle injury, so his season's officially done. Now, we didn't have Dylan Sampson in this game, so it's hard to know what it would look like in a contest where we have Sampson, but it was Raheem Sanders as the guy that was taking on, the rookie. So taking on more of the workload on the ground, 59% of the attempts after the departure of Judkins. He had 67% of the snaps inside the 5. Didn't have as much route work, 22%. That was mostly Travion Williams. He had a 44% route participation rate and had a solid target share as well for Travion. So Sanders looks like he's probably the early down back. If we don't have Sampson back, it's probably Travion on pass downs. If we get Sampson back, though, I think he might eat into a little bit of what Sanders is getting on the ground. I will say early in the year, we did have a backfield mostly split between Sampson and Sanders. Ford was still a little bit of a factor, but they did give Sanders a lot of early down work. So I don't think we can completely rule out that Sanders is the lead ball carrier the rest of the way.
Going to be a tough matchup for them next week against the Steelers defense that we just saw really shut down that Lions run game. Again, just based on kind of the upside we've seen from the Browns and the sad injured state of that offensive line, really doubt that we're going to be able to overly trust.
You just told me to shut up right away.
You're good. Get better soon, Quinshawn, though. Obviously, that really is a terrible combo here. Did not look good when it happened. Keep an eye on Shedeur Sanders as well. Had a pinky issue going on, but it was on his throwing hand, so he was kind of in and out of the injury tent there. But last note here would just be, again, we can't trust the passing game, but I will give Shedeur a little bit of slack. His first interception hit Quinshawn Judkins in the chest before bouncing away, and his second one was tipped on the line of scrimmage, so tough to really blame him for either. Did chip in 49 rushing yards, Dwayne. Looked a little bit faster than I've seen him so far, so good stuff there.
He started the game hot. I mean, we don't have to keep talking, but he started the game hot. It just didn't work out at the end.
My opinion of Shador is higher after having watched him for 5 weeks than it was before. So is he going to be a franchise quarterback for the next 15 years? I don't know. I'd still probably doubt it, but hey, at least maybe the Browns found something in their 5th round rookie. Moving along, we had the Chargers take down the Cowboys 34-17. LA winning outright as 1.5-point dogs. The over did cash at 50.5. Justin Herbert 300 yards and a pair of touchdowns through the air. Also chipped in 42 rushing yards and even a goal line QB sneak after Keenan Allen got them down to 1. 0 sacks, Dwain. I know Quentin Williams was out, but just my God, what Jerry Jones say after the game, like he's not really overly worried about, Matt Eberflus and his status. I would hope that's because this dude's getting axed, by the end of the season. I mean, I guess you can wait until after week 18, but just great performance from Herbert, and he was moving well and just throwing lasers, so I don't want to take anything away from him. But we see this every single week. Every quarterback has their best game against the Cowboys, and good for them.
Yeah. Herbert gave you 30.2 fantasy points this week, guys. 79% completion rate, 300 passing yards, 10.3 yards per attempt. So, and then he, of course, threw the 2 passing touchdowns and ran one in on the tush push. He had 8 carries for 42 yards and a touchdown. So, like you said, it's hard to take what someone does against the Cowboys and try to extrapolate that in any form or fashion, because any other matchup is going to actually be harder than facing the Cowboys for quarterbacks. I think the biggest news here is really the backfield, because we'll have to wait and see what happened with Kamani Vidal with an injury. He got injured on the 3rd drive. Did not see him come back. And so Amari Hampton gave us 16.5 fantasy points today. Handled 53% of the snaps, 57% of the attempts, guys. Ended up with 16 carries on the day, 39% route participation rate. So we did see Hassan Haskins working a little bit as running back 2 after Vidal left the game, but he didn't have a huge snap share. It was still like right around 10% for Haskins. So if we don't have Vidal, we're going to feel a lot better about Hampton. Probably have him more as a high-end running back 2 or maybe even a low-end running back 1, Ian, in a game without Vidal.
And clearly the Chargers have been a little up and down with their running back usage, but I think it's pretty clear that they're down to go 50-50, 60-40 when they have 2 they trust. They weren't doing that with Vidal and Hassan Haskins, man. So maybe we do see a few carries here and there, but I'm with you. I would be expecting Hampton to have something closer to that, like 80% snap rate we saw in week 3 and week 4 without Najee and pre them overly trusting Vidal. So it's going to be obviously a much tougher matchup for the Chargers against the Houston Texans on Saturday, though. So again, Hampton, we just saw Genty go off against them. Certainly we'll have him in that upside RB2 conversation anyway, but trying to again overly bank on Quentin Johnson and Ladd McConkey staying hot after each managed to score a touchdown. This one could be a bit of wishful thinking there. Meanwhile, for those Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, 244 yards and a pair of passing touchdowns, one deep down the sideline of George Pickens. That was absolutely of the lovely variety, 130 yards. And again, that score for Pickens in a major bounce back performance. Only Puka Nacua and Jackson Smith and the Jigba have more receiving yards than Pickens this season. It is quite a large gap between those guys, but again, still a very good year. And good to see Pickens come back after, again, back-to-back down weeks. The second touchdown went to Ryan Flournoy. Also had a second touchdown to Flournoy, unfortunately nullified by a hold. Otherwise, Dwain, some unfortunate bust in week 16. Javonte Williams just 34 rushing yards, 9 receiving yards. I do believe that was his worst fantasy performance of the season. And while CeeDee Lamb did manage to clear 1,000 receiving yards for the 5th straight season, that is awesome. Still finished with just 51 scoreless yards on the day. So seemed like business as usual. Jake Ferguson, 19 scoreless yards. He's got one of the lowest yards per target marks in the entire league at this point. Yeah, that's the Cowboys.
Jake Ferguson, when you have Pickens and Lamb, has not been good. Like you mentioned, business as usual for the receivers. I will say, I think Javonte just might be hurt, man. 57% of the snaps today, which is a little lower than what we've seen. 45% of the rushing attempts. Malik Davis had 40%. He had 8 of the carries. So I think that Williams could be trying to play through an injury, and they might be trying to lighten the load a little bit. He still gave you another 3 targets in the passing game, but only 12 total opportunities today. So I would say it's something to keep an eye on, but you're like, keep an eye on. I've got 1 game left, So I mean, we'll listen to the practice reports and stuff like that. But I'm a little worried that Williams is injured, Ian, and I mean I don't think he can be trusted right now. Obviously, in fantasy lineups, it's been rough over the last few weeks,
and that's what we talk about, man. These shoulder issues that he obviously had happen last week. I mean, you see them kind of be pronounced even when guys are still playing. So it did seem like on the field a couple times he was moving a bit gingerly, came back out on the field. And look, they are facing, the Commanders next Thursday. So I don't think it's a situation where Javonte is going to be outside of our top 24 or anything like that, but certainly could see him being closer to that RB2 line than the top 12 stats that, again, he had been earning for a lot of the season. So unfortunate there for Javonte. Obviously, has had a good season otherwise, but again, hopefully has at least one more good game in him here against the Commanders. Moving along, we had the Titans take down the Chiefs. That's right, the Titans took down the Chiefs in the year 2025, 26-9. Tennessee winning outright as 3-point dogs. Under did cash though at 37.5. Cam Ward 228 yards and a pair of passing touchdowns. Also just another ridiculous throw rolling to his left, managing to hit Chamari DK downfield. This dude flashes multiple times per week. I am so excited to probably overdraft him throughout the 2026 offseason process. But found Tajay Spears for a touchdown. He had a nice game for you guys that managed to maybe have a best ball lineup there in the balance. And again, managed to find DK for a shorter touchdown. Also got another Tony Pollard 100+ yard rushing game. As soon as everyone was done with him, he's put together a string of very nice weeks. The Titans will be facing the Saints next with the Dwain. So again, it's not the toughest matchup in the world. Pollard already someone that we moved up to RB24. I still think he's probably the only guy I want to even consider like putting in, a starting lineup for the fantasy championship. But good things for a Titan squad that, again, kind of had every opportunity to quit towards the end of the season, and they've continued to put up some numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the notable thing here, and again, it's one data point, guys. We don't know that we have a trend or anything. It's really been mostly Pollard over the last few weeks. But 47% of the snaps went to Spears today and 54% to Pollard. It was still Pollard leading the way on the ground, was 57% of the rushing attempts, which is still 21 carries. 35% though went to Spears. He had been down in that 15 to 18% range. So we might have a little bit larger role for Spears. He was handling the passing down work and stuff before, which he had 5 targets today, guys, on a 19% target share. So I have a little bit more confidence in Spears heading into next week, Ian. But obviously I would need to be in more of a sicko league to want to have him in a lineup.
Very much with you there. And I think we can say the same thing for this Chiefs offense, Dwain. No Patrick Mahomes. Unfortunately, no Gardner Minshew moving forward. The belief is he, again, tore his ACL. So it's going to be Chris Oladukin. Sorry, I'll work on it. But 3 for 8, 15 yards. This is a disaster, Dwain.
Yeah, this is bad. Everything's a downgrade. It was already a downgrade. Well, now you have to look at it as an even further downgrade. Worthy at a 94% route participation. Juju is at 94%. Obviously, you guys know we did not have Rashee Rice this week due to the concussion. Tyquan Thornton was also out of this game. So those are the top 2 wide receivers. Marquise Brown was the wide receiver 3 for the team, but it's going to be hard to be. I mean, obviously, if you have Rashee Rice, you'll probably play him if he's back next week. But other than that, I don't know that I would play anything here. I do have to call out Isaiah Pacheco did complete the takeover of the backfield. It's entirely too late, but it happened. He scored 13.5 fantasy points today. He started the takeover last week. Well, this week, Ian, 72% of the snaps, 67% of the rushing attempts, 68% route participation. And the dude had a 32% target share today. He had 7 of the targets. So Pacheco's definitely, taken over these last 2 games. So if you're absolutely hurting, I think the volume will be there. It's going to be tough though to know what kind of fantasy production you're going to get out of it.
I'm sorry, by the way, I actually listed Gardner Minshew's stats, Dwain. Chris actually did a little bit better than
11 of 16,
Minshew managed to do. Yeah. So my apologies to the Oladukin family. I'm sure they already hate me enough already. But yeah, man, I will just say, I kind of look at a lot of times, the overall viability of a play caller. And not that Andy Reid's, a Hall of Famer the second he retires. I get that. But you see how the Packers offense still manages to keep going from Jordan Love to Malik Willis. And then you just see the Chiefs offense completely fall apart like this. Probably a good indication that, again, there's a little more going on there than just Patrick Mahomes being out of the picture. So yeah, it's a disaster. At least, Dwain, they don't have a short week against the Broncos coming up or something like that. Oh wait, they do. They play the Broncos on Thursday night, and I'm with you. I do not want any of these guys anywhere near my starting lineup. Moving on, we had the Bengals take down the Dolphins 45-21, since he winning outright as 3.5-point faves over cashier at 48.5. This one was 45-14. Shortly in the fourth quarter, Joe Burrow did not even have to finish it out. So really was not, too difficult of a performance for Burrow, 309 yards and 4 touchdowns through the air. A lovely one to T. Higgins early. Basically didn't go back to him the rest of the game, but that's okay. Didn't really need to. Found Jamar Chase for 109 yards and found Chase Brown for a pair of rather easy touchdowns. 3 on the day for Chase Brown, who, Dwain, dang it, he's done it again, man. Weeks 1 through 7, he was the RB 33 with 10.1 PPR points per game. Weeks 8 through 16, 20.5 PPR points per game, good for RB5 status. He benefited from no Samaje Perine for a little bit there, but the dude's just scoring touchdowns nonstop lately.
Yeah, and it's really different than last year. Last year, it was an injury that unlocked everything for him. This year, he actually had the larger workload. Then he lost it. Then Piron got hurt. He gained it back. Piron came back and took his role back. And now, really, over these last few weeks, Piron's still involved, but Brown has just slowly taken over a little bit more of the backfield. 61% snap share today, Ian. Only 48% of the rushing attempts. So, like, Piron's still, really involved there. But he just gets these targets, man. I mean, and today was one of his lower target shares at 13%. And obviously one of them was in the end zone for a touchdown. Then obviously he scored 3 touchdowns on the day. Was it 2 rushing and 1 receiving? Is that correct?
Two receiving, 1
rushing. Or 2 receiving and 1 rushing. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, he's playing good. He's the number 3 receiver essentially for the team. It's Chase, Higgins, and then him and Gesicki. So P. Ryan did score 12.1 fantasy points. He stole the first touchdown of the day. And I'm sure Chase Brown managers were pretty worried when you saw P. Ryan get the first touchdown, but he comes back and still scores you 3.
Huge second half, mostly even just a huge third quarter for Chase Brown. Goes to show you how quickly, again, fantasy matchups can be thrown up on their heads. So Bengals will be facing the Cardinals next week. Hopefully many more fantasy points to come in that one. Meanwhile, for the Dolphins, not the best first chapter, I would say, of the Quinn Ewers experience. The interceptions weren't brutal. He tried to, honestly, he threw like a pretty good ball over the middle. It was in traffic, but, they live on those throws over the middle kind of in the traffic in that Mike McDaniel system. And then the next one was just kind of tight coverage and Jalen Waddle lost. So, it wasn't horrible. I do think he throws like a catchable ball, but let's face it, McDaniel said he'll start watching week 17. He's going to start week 17 pending a tape review, at least for Quinn Ewers. So probably going to be out there again. I don't think we can be overly excited about it, but Dolphins versus Buccaneers, Dwayne, Jalen Waddle did enough here with 72 yards and 9 targets. Like Waddle's going to be top 30-ish? Like I don't see a situation where we're ranking them like outside the top 36 guys.
Well, we were ranking Waddle inside the top 18, thinking that Tua would throw for 200 yards per game, and we at least saw Ewers throw for 260 today. Like he didn't throw any touchdowns, but 8.7 yards per attempt, and some of it was, yes, a little bit in garbage time-esque kind of stuff, guys. So I totally get it. But hey, at least Ewers threw for 250 plus yards, and we know that he can do it. Like that's kind of the first litmus test. Doesn't mean he's going to do it every week, but at least he showed us that he can do it. So yeah, I think Waddle. I had Waddle at wide receiver 25 this week. I don't think I'll have him any lower than that heading into next week. But nothing else really here on the Dolphins other than Darren Waller, 58% route participation rate, so still in a timeshare with Dulcich. The other wide receivers you guys aren't touching, so it's really Waddle, Achane, and maybe Waller, who's still in a part-time role. I will say on the Bengals real quick, Ian, I can't believe you didn't ask me this. Gesicki did keep the slot role over Yoshivas. So wasn't he your Hartitz heater? I was trying to remember. Wasn't he your Hartitz heater?
Was. Who can really remember? But yeah.
And it was a good call. Well, it was a good call by you because Yoshivas' routes fell to 44% and Gesicki's were at 79%, guys. So he essentially is now. He's been for the last 2 weeks. Every time we say something is happening, it changes. But for the last 2 weeks, he has been the slot wide receiver. The big thing is T. Higgins was back today, and he still kept that.
That is huge. So thank you for correcting that again. Nice game from Gesicki. Did manage to score that touchdown. So I thought Darren Waller was on his way to having a good game as well. Obviously had the nut matchup here against the Bengals, and man, was just big boying some of those Bengals linebackers out there. The way that dude can snatch the football is something to be seen. Ultimately finished over 40 yards. So those just fumbled, man, when they were just kind of throwing with dump off on 3rd and long. So I wish they would just kind of go full time to Waller, but obviously can't assume that's going to be the case here ahead of week 17. Shout out to Devon Achane though, had a sweet 48-yard touchdown run. Also had another cool 31-yard catch and run that was nullified on a pretty iffy OPI. Mike McDaniel was quite furious about that. And also, I'd be remiss, Dwayne, if I didn't mention Jalen Wright over 50 yards and a touchdown. Never wrong, just early. To be clear, I was definitely wrong on Jalen Wright, but it's good to see him at least score a few touchdowns as the season winds down. Moving along, the Saints took down the Jets 29-6. Saints winning outright as 6.5-point faves. Underdid cash here at 40. Tyler Shuck, man, 49 pass attempts completed, 32 of them for 308 yards and a touchdown. That went to Chris Olave, who had a monster day, 148 yards and 2 scores. Now you heard me that said Tyler Shuck only threw him 1. That's because Taysom Hill, Dwayne, apparently was the entire core of the Saints offense. He threw the touchdown to Chris Olave, which was wide open. He also lost a fumble. He also threw for 42 yards. He also caught 4 passes for 36 yards, could have even had an 18-yard touchdown catch, but that got nullified on a holding penalty. So it sounds like, Dwayne, it wasn't Audric Estimate, it wasn't Evan Hall, it was Taysom freaking Hill.
Yeah, Estime was a snap leader, but it's Taysom's backfield. That's what my show sheet says that I wrote up. Taysom scored 15.3 fantasy points, 42% of the snaps versus 56% for Estime, but
What are they getting
52.
out of this?
I don't know. I
What?
don't know. Yeah, you getting a good look at a young player. I don't know, man. 52% of the rushing attempts. That was 12 attempts. Maybe he sells tickets. Maybe the Saints fans really love. I would be calling myself a faint fan if I had to watch like a 49-year-old quarterback, tight end play quarterback and running back for my team. But Taysom, this is the best he's looked in, for sure. And one of them was on kind of little trick play, where they kind of give him the shuffle pass underneath in the
He
middle.
almost averaged 4 yards per
open,
carry.
Yeah, it was a wide open lane on that one. But you mentioned it, 38-yard passing touchdown, and this is also the most active he's been in the receiving game. So I'll say, like, for you DFS kind of players and stuff, like Taysom is a potential option where he can be played as a tight end, because now he's involved, like, not fully across anything, but a little bit across everything. But the biggest thing is, man, 52% of the rushing attempts. Only 22% of the rushing attempts went to Estime. 22% went to Hull. So pretty gross.
This was a game also with Devon Vele, also sidelined, in addition to Devin Neal and Alvin Kamara. So, again, maybe the perfect storm of factors, if you will, that led to Taysom Hill doing his thing. We can also say the same for Juwan Johnson. Dwain caught 8 of 9 targets for 89 yards. I think 7 of those catches came before halftime, man. He was eating in the first 30 minutes. Couldn't quite get going, as much down the stretch. But Saints are facing the Titans next week. And as we've seen, man, it is pretty hard to run on the Titans. So Chris Olave was already a top 10 wide receiver for us this week. But Juwan Johnson, man, not that he was out of the picture, but I could see us potentially prioritizing him as a legit top 12 play again with Devon Vele sidelined.
Yeah, 16.9 PPR points, 19% target share, which was 9 targets in a game where Shuck threw the ball a ton today, 49 passing attempts for the Saints, who've really been more of a run-heavy team, in these games with Shuck under center, but they showed that they were willing to really air it out today in a game that they won, handily over the Jets. So I think that's a positive thing for Shuck. But yes, Juwan Johnson, I do think borderline tight end 1.
Meanwhile, for the Jets, 8 more sacks for Brady Cook. He also lost a fumble. Maybe Tyrod Taylor's back. Maybe he's not. They got the Patriots next week. Dwayne, at what point is Breece Hall just out of our top 24?
Well, I mean, he's outside the top 24 every week in the actual fantasy ranks from fantasy points. I don't know why we keep ranking him in the top 24. Well, because he gets 16 carries a game, man. The same reason that we move Genty out. When we move Hall out next week, he'll do what Genty did today, and he'll score a long, fluky touchdown. And it'll be like, oh my God, you should have just stuck with utilization. You know how this stuff goes. But no, it's a terrible offense. And if you guys have these players, if you have Breece Hall on your team, it's probably been a struggle for you anyway. So you're probably not in the playoffs, and you're probably not listening to us right now.
A.D. Mitchell caught 3 of 6 targets for 43 scoreless yards. Again, no more Garrett Wilson the rest of the season. So Mitchell, just based on target share alone, is going to be in that top 40-ish conversation. But man, could be catching that Christian Gonzalez shadow next week. I will not be going out of my way to start Mitchell, even if there is a fire. Moving along, we had the Vikings take down the Giants 16-13. Minnesota winning outright as 2.5-point faves. Of course, they won outright, but under cashed here at 41.5. Justin Jefferson woke up, caught 6 of 8 targets for 85 yards, multiple awesome sideline snags. But the problem is, just as we were actually starting to see a little bit of chemistry there with JJ McCarthy and Jefferson, McCarthy unfortunately suffered a hand injury. It appears to have not been a broken bone per Ben Gosling. So we'll see what happens. He was playing okay for the most part. The interception went right off of Jalen Naylor's hands. And I mean, he should have had a touchdown of Jordan Addison. Unfortunately, Addison did drop that one. So I will say with some of these, like even the Justin Jefferson drop in the end zone, like, hey, JJ, man, don't throw every single pass at 120 miles per hour when you're 10 feet away from the guy. So I get it. Like, cause I know some people are just saying, oh, all these drops and stuff, but there is a little bit of that. He also did take 3 sacks with a brutal, strip sack that got taken back for a touchdown, which led the injury in the first place. But man, as bad as McCarthy still has been overall, but he's playing better. Okay. So I'm riding that line. I recognize it. It's been 3, good games. The drop off for him to Brosmore, Dwayne, like that's going to ruin things, even in a matchup against the Lions defense on Thursday that, we're not terrified of.
Yeah, you're going to get to rank Justin Jefferson outside the top 24 easily this week. If it's a Brosmer that's going to be starting in. If we have McCarthy back under center, to your point against the Lions, he's still going to be more of a fringe low end wide receiver too. Like you mentioned, he looked really good. 35% target share. The catches on the sideline, 14.5 fantasy points, but still, it's just so hard It's like everything's got to be fantastic to make it work. He had the one red zone target today, 59 air yards. It's a lost season, for Justin Jefferson. Addison got banged up, got knocked out of this game a little bit, only 69% routes. TJ Hawkinson, who folks thought were heating up, and they were talking about a lot about how JJ has been targeting his tight ends. Yeah, 4% target share today, 1.2 fantasy points. So I think the biggest news here is Jordan Mason got injured, Ian. And so that led to more of a full-time role for Aaron Jones today. He had 81% of the rushing attempts, 21 carries, 100% of the 2-minute offense, also a 13% target share. So if we don't have Jordan Mason, that just means you have Xavier Scott really as the competition. Now they could activate Ty Chandler. I know he's available. Now I don't know if they opened his practice window and that may have closed. That would be the one thing we would have to check on. So we'll have to wait and see who the other running back might be if we don't have Jordan Mason. But obviously this would be an upgrade for Aaron Jones from a volume standpoint. But if it's Brosmer, it's gonna still make it harder. It's gonna make it hard to push him past anything like a borderline running back 2 if it's Brosmer.
That's where he was ahead of what was, again, a really good on-paper matchup. Right. Certainly didn't suck out there, had 93 yards on 23 touches, but didn't also exactly return the sort of, high-end results we were hoping for. So he's now north of 100 touches since his last touchdown. Dwain, maybe he can find it on Thursday against a Lions run defense that was supposed to be good, and then Jaylen Warren said F all that and decided to go do his thing. So, again, we'll see what happens. But with that short turnaround, again, going into Thursday, not looking great for McCarthy or Jordan Mason. Meanwhile, for the Giants, man, Jackson Dart, that was a brutal performance, dude. 0.02 fantasy points. I think in some leagues, depending on your scoring, he might have been in the negative. His previous single game lows, guys, in starts were 13.6 and 16.6. So really unforeseen. I mean, obviously Brian Flores' defense had a huge impact here, took 5 sacks, and honestly should have been more. He had 2 sacks that they actually called roughing the passer just because the guys freaking hit him in the head. One of them was more iffy for sure. The interception did go off Theo Johnson's hands, but I have not seen Jackson Dart look that rushed, for 60 minutes of football. Dwain, I do think we can just write it off and say Brian Flores does this to all rookies, but yeah, that sucked.
The Vikings pass defense has been legit, early in the season, then over the last 6 to 7 games, man, they've terrorized pretty much everyone that they've played. But if you look at Dart, I can't believe that you didn't lead, with Mike Kafka being a complete coward. They ran the ball 30 times today and dropped back to pass 13.
Do you see what happened when they dropped back?
Yeah, I did see, but it was the second quarter before he had an actual pass completed. Before he actually threw a pass. The whole first quarter was run plays. So look, I get it, but I mean, you need to evaluate your quarterback. 7 of 13, I get it.
He got sacked every time he dropped back. I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay. I would still throw the ball more than that when you're getting killed. I still would rather see what happens with it, but it doesn't matter. We've talked about this. Under Kafka, they're very run heavy, and they continue to do that today. You had 16 carries for Tracy, 11 carries for Singletary. So the offense pretty much ran through the 2 running backs, and they gave you nothing. Not nothing. Tracy gave you 9.8 PPR points. Singletary gave you 5.6. Not what you hoped for.
Last quarterback to throw a touchdown against the Vikings was Lamar Jackson in week 10, people. They're absolutely cooking. It wasn't going great for a little bit because they were locking down early. And then I remember doing in week 12, I think I did a weeks 1 through 6 versus 7 through 12 EPA allowed per drop back. And they had gone from 1st to 27th. I was like, everyone's figuring out Brian Flores again. And then he said, not so fast, my friend. And now is absolutely balling. So yeah, that was rough. I mean, next week against the Giants get the Raiders. So I would like to just kind of throw this out for the most part, Dwain, and get back to still ranking Jackson Dart as a low-end QB1 for that matchup?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, this was a brutal one though. But look, it does happen to rookies, so I'm not gonna overthink it.
Left tackle Andrew Thomas did have to exit with a hamstring injury. So again, if we are going to see this offensive line in complete disarray, could be a situation where then we do have to adjust those ranks a little bit lower. Moving on to our game of the week, brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy, Xfinity. Imagine that. We had the Panthers take down the Buccaneers 23-20. Carolina winning outright as 3-point dogs under cashier at 45. So Bryce Young, just 191 yards, but did throw 2 touchdowns and multiple nails throws on third downs, particularly one that Jalen Coker over down the sideline at the end that helped win the game. Also had an awesome touchdown to Jatavian Sanders where he was doing his best, magician sort of impression in the pocket. Good stuff there. So I feel like Bryce over the last, 6-7 weeks has put together more good games than bad. Good to see there, Dwain, particularly when it does come side by side with a nice performance from Tedderone McMillan, caught 6 of 10 targets for 73 yards and a touchdown. So T-Mac, someone who, again, kind of continues to be in that top 20 weekly conversation. I think he will be again next week, although it's going to be a tougher matchup against the Seahawks. My bigger issue here is just Rico Dowdle, man. Like, he hasn't reached 60 rushing yards in a game since blowing up against the Packers in week 9. And now going up against that Seahawks defense next week. Is either Panthers running back could be in your top 24, do you think?
Yeah, the Panthers running back duo is starting to feel more like the Seahawks duo. Not the Seahawks duo we saw last week, but what we had seen before that. So yeah, Dowdle gave you 8.3 fantasy points, even though he led the team in rushing attempts, 53%. He only had 9 carries on the day, but he had 6 targets, a 19% target share. And then Chuba Hubbard, is doing just enough to really make it tough on Dowdle. So yeah, just not running as pure as he was. Dowdle was just running extremely hot early in the season, Ian, with all the long plays and he was playing great. He was playing really great football. Now I'd say he's playing average football, and he's got a lesser role on an offense that, it's mediocre. I don't want to say the Panthers offense is bad. I think it's middle of the pack. I don't think the passing game is that great, but as an overall offense, it's like middle of the pack, but it's certainly not a great offense. And that makes it a challenge when you're having to share so much time.
Again, the point differential is pretty hilarious at this point. Let's see. They are now 8-7 on the season, Dwain. And with that 3-point win, that takes their point differential to -50 on the season. So, hey, guess what? Real life football, you're winning the close games. That's awesome. Fans should not give a single crap about point differential, but it does go to show you that maybe, just maybe, team is getting, don't want to say lucky, but maybe they're getting a little bit lucky in these one-score games.
I don't throw that out. I actually do think it's a pretty important data point. Like, I think it tells us like a team that's most likely a fugazi. And I think that's really like the Panthers. Look, they're in a really easy division. That's helped them out a lot. Like if you were to, anybody can get in the playoffs and get hot. So I don't want to take that away from them, but the Panthers are overperforming right now. Like, and they're a mediocre team. Like, they're barely above 500 and we're saying they're overperforming. Like, we wouldn't be surprised if they had won 5 games instead of how many they've won.
There's 7-1 in one-score games. Again, good job. Good job being clutch. Very hard historically to keep that going, as we saw the Kansas City Chiefs from 2024 to 2025. So, hey, next week against the Seahawks, that certainly will be a test. They do have to take on the Buccaneers again, though, in Week 18, so the NFC South not quite finished yet. Speaking of those Buccaneers, disappointing here from Baker Mayfield, man, because we talked about last week, got all of his wide receivers back. It was the first time we've seen him really put forward great efficiency since kind of the end of his little MVP campaign during the first 5-6 weeks of the year, but just 145 passing yards. And when you got Evans, Abuka, McMillan, and Godwin all at your disposal, man, I just hate to see it. So he did find Mike Evans for a short goal line touchdown. Kept throwing him targets later, man. Like, they nearly had a second one there, wound up just giving it to Sean Tucker instead. But really was Evans as the only one I think we can overly trust at this point. 40 scoreless yards for Emeka Abuka, just the wide receiver 40 since week 6 at this point. Times have been tough, and it's actually, I think, wide receiver 50 on a per game basis. Even Chris Godwin, it looked like he was showing a little bit of juice briefly, man. Just someone that I'm not exactly going to be going out of my way to try to start with the fantasy playoffs on the line. So it's Mike Evans and everyone else. And then we go to this backfield, Dwain, and like Bucky Irving, he was at the 1-yard line for the Mike Evans touchdown. So we saw him on the field at the goal line. He just didn't get the ball, but man, disappointing couple games.
Yeah, he got 1 snap inside the 5, and it's the one we saw where he got to the 1. The rest of the snaps inside the 5 went to Tucker. So it's, yeah, this is a multi-week trend we have now since Bucky Irving's come back. He's got no carries inside the 5-yard line. All of those have gone to Tucker. But whenever we took it, even at just snaps, he's had 1 snap, just 1 snap since his return inside the 5-yard line. So, yeah, it's look, he's still Bucky Irving. He has taken over more of the passing game. So it's like they're like, hey, we're going to give these carries to Tucker inside the 5. So we're going to give you some of Rachaad White's passing work. But as much as we like targets and stuff, like, we really need the touchdowns to make Bucky Irving pop off. You know, you got 7.1 fantasy points today from him. You got 8 from Rachaad White, 6.3 from Sean Tucker. Yeah, it's a pretty gross mess. So we'll just have to we think Bucky Irving's a special player, guys. But I mean, we had him as a mid-range running back 1 upon his return. We had to downgrade him to low end running back 1. I think he's now ultimately, Ian, drops down into high end running back 2 territory. You're not going to get carries inside the 5, and they've shown us this in 4 games that really, really capture potential as a running back.
And now, man, like 2 straight weeks of all the wide receivers being there, and Bucky only has 1 catch. I know he can catch the football, but I don't think they're going out of their way to do it in a passing game that, again, just really isn't catching his stride. Yeah, it's not good, man. We're not getting goal line touches. We're not getting targets. Then that means you can't rank 47th among 48 backs in yards per carry. So again, I know yards per carry is fluky and all that stuff, but at some point, man, come on, Bucky, be the Bucky that we know that you can be. I'm with you though, more of a top 15 as opposed to top 5. Unfortunate for sure. Anything else on the wide receiver stuff, Dwain? Is Ibuka still the odd man?
No, you did a great job. Evans is the main guy we can trust. Godwin's in a full-time role, but doesn't really look very good. He had 90% of the routes today, and he had 100%, or was it 90%? Something. I think it was 100% or 90% last week as well. Ibuka at 50%. Last week he was at 60, so even lower. McMillan was the wide receiver 3, and Ibuka was the wide receiver 4. McMillan had 63% route participation rate. So Ibuka is now into wide receiver 4 territory.
Yikes. Life comes at you quickly. So is Xfinity. Again, this has been our Xfinity game of the week. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Xfinity. Imagine that. Moving on to the late afternoon slate, guys. We had the Jaguars take down the Broncos 34-20. Jaguars winning outright as 3.5 point dogs. Overcast here at 46.5. This was awesome, man, because again, 3.5 games of Trevor Lawrence going off. Oh, yeah, but the schedule, the competition. All right, in Mile High against the Broncos, man. Can't be using that, and we do not need to. 279 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Also chipped in his 7th rushing touchdown of the season. That is more than Bijan Robinson for those counting at home. So nice, again, kind of back shoulder throws to Bretton Strange and Parker Washington for the scores. Got some help from Parker Washington being a yak beast today. Had Riley Moss in the blender for most of the afternoon on his way to getting 145 yards. But just really great stuff from Trevor Lawrence, Dwain. He now gets a Colts defense that's all kinds of banged up next week. Look, he's been like on kind of the QB1 borderline in some of these good matchups that he's had for us the last few weeks. But against the Colts in week 17 on this heater, man, like, is Trevor Lawrence a top 6 quarterback?
Man, I probably won't go there just because I know as soon as I do, he's going to throw out a big, dirty Trevor dud. But he's going to be in the top 12. Yeah, you know, he's going to be in the top 12 in that game. So in a game that they're going to be trying to win for playoff positioning, like you mentioned, he's on a heater. Plus, you get the upside of his rushing. You know, Trevor Lawrence is a guy that we liked in the preseason. And then after the first 10 games, we didn't like him anymore. So as soon as we gave up, this is what Trevor Lawrence does. As soon as you give up, this is what he does. And as soon as you get back on the bandwagon, you're going to wish that you hadn't again. So just for the sake of people that have him in and they're riding on a fantasy heater right now, I'm not going to rank him too high next week. We'll keep him in the low end QB1 territory. I think the big thing here is we got the game without Bajal Tutin, and we saw 68% of the snaps go to Travis Etienne, 64% of the rushing attempts, and we really saw more of the design rushing workload go to Trevor Lawrence. He was up to 16% in this game, 4 design rush plays for Trevor Lawrence, and then LaQuint Allen was getting the rest. So Etienne in a very solid role. You know, normally like he's in that 55% snap share, 55 rush share. So he's basically 10 percentage points above in both of those categories without Bajal Tutin, which is not a ton, guys, but like we'll take it. Like Etienne's already been a really good player over the last 6 games and know he's in a slightly better role in an offense that we like. I think that's really nice. And then as far as the receivers go, Ian, you were talking about Parker Washington, and like he'd had a massive game today with a 29% target share and was running wide open quite often and doing a lot after the catch. 26.5 fantasy points. He had 2 end zone targets on the day, ended up with 145 yards and a receiving touchdown. 29% target share. That was on a 70% route participation. He was the wide receiver 3 for the team, and he was doing all this. So, you know, we like Parker Washington. He's flashed like this. I don't think this means that we can like trust him, that we think he's, you know, like this great fantasy option we want to have in our lineup heading into next week. My gut says we'll still have him in that wide receiver 4 territory.
I'm surprised it went to Parker. I thought it was going to go to Jacoby. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the data about who, you know, Pat Surtain was spending most of his afternoon against, but there's a reason why Riley Moss is the most targeted cornerback in football. Usually he does a little bit better against him, but it certainly has had his bad days. And that is because PS2 has taken away the number 1. So again, just happened to be Parker's day. I would expect bigger things from Jacoby in particular, and hopefully at least a boom or 2 for Brian Thomas Jr. here against the Colts next Sunday. So yeah, man, Etienne did find the end zone as a receiver, just short little swing pass, had a nice explosive run too. So not Not playing bad by any stretch and getting us to fantasy points, but 7 of his last 8 games, yards per carry south of 4. Honestly, not too different, I would say, from that 2023 season where, again, really was looking awesome the first 8 games. Maybe just, was able to skate by a little bit with some touchdown goodness the rest of the way. Meanwhile, for those Broncos, winning streak is snapped. Doesn't mean that Bo Nix still didn't make some good throws out there. 353 yards, a touchdown, and a later game interception on 4th down. Wasn't a good throw by any stretch, but also, again, you got to kind of press at that point in the game. Finally, Dwain linked up with Troy Franklin for a deep ball on a nice little half rollout, only their second one of the season. And that was my question for you because, unfortunately, very scary injury at the end. Pat Bryant was taken off on a stretcher. So get better soon, Pat Bryant. You would think it's going to be Troy Franklin behind Courtland Sutton, assuming Bryant's going to be out ahead of next week's matchup against Kansas City, which is on Thursday night.
Yeah, so last week we did see little Jordan Humphrey have more routes than Troy Franklin, but we saw, and that was a game that had Pat Bryant out, but it was Troy Franklin really as the other guy getting targets beyond, Courtland Sutton. So we're kind of, slicing hairs like at this point, like with Franklin, it's like a 10% difference in the route participation rate we hoped that he would have, but he was still getting the targets last week. So yeah, I think Franklin we would look at as the wide receiver 2 as far as target expectations in the offense, even though he might not get back into that full role like we saw earlier in the year. But you guys saw what Troy Franklin did last week, gave you a nice fantasy outing. So we'll listen to the injury reports, but yeah, hopefully Pat Bryant's okay, Ian, but it didn't look good.
Meanwhile, RJ Harvey, man, I thought just eye test wise, it was his best game of the season.
Oh, yeah.
50 yards and a touchdown on the ground, 71 receiving yards, and just 2 plays in particular, man, where he managed to show that tackle breaking ability and burst. Finally seems like he's kind of, understanding the nuances, I guess, of being a receiving back in the Sean Payton offense, which is what had us all so excited throughout this offseason to begin with. So still very much looking like a top 15 play, at least, Dwain, the rest of the way.
Yeah. I mean, he looked really good today. He was out there. He got 11% target share, which has been right where he's been since he's taken over the starting role. I want to say he was sitting right at like 10.5% in the games without J.K. Dobbins. 22.1 fantasy points in this game. He was still the lead ball carrier as well. But to your point, like what he's able to do, like with the ball in his hands after the catch, this was definitely the most explosive game that we saw from Harvey. But man, I think 3 out of the last 4 games, he's given us over 20 fantasy points. Last week I know wasn't as good, but the 2 weeks before that, you got over 20 fantasy points. So RJ Harvey, man, really paying off late in the season for fantasy managers. It took him, some of the drafts, yeah, I get it, guys. He got steamed a little bit, but some of you, I know, were getting him around 5 or 6. And while it wasn't great early in the year, if you managed to hang around, you're feeling pretty good about starting RJ Harvey at this point.
Just please, if and when J.K. Dobbins is back, if they keep this committee going next year, just get Tyler Bidet out of here. That's all I ask. No shade at Dobbins, no shade at Harvey, only shade at Tyler Bidet. I joke. But yeah, Courtland Sutton also 86 yards and a touchdown. Could have been an even bigger day. Had, a fastball from Bo Nix. I'm not calling it a drop, but it did go off his fingertips in the back of the end zone. And then also just racked up well north of 100 unrealized air yards by the time the game was done, putting together a handful of good games himself here as the season winds it down. Moving on, Dwayne, we had the Falcons take down the Cardinals 26-19. Atlanta winning outright as 2.5-point faves. Under cash here at 48.5. Elijah Higgins season. You know how sad of a thing that is for me to say for the Cardinals. So actually, we'll go to the Falcons first, Dwayne. But yeah, Kirk Cousins, 197 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also, freaking had the vulture away a goal line score. I did not even think they had the Kirk Cousins quarterback
I didn't
playbook.
think they did either.
But yeah,
I thought that was only Tyler Algier.
Right. Took matters. And they did it after he attempted a pass to Jake Matthews as well. Kirk kind of overthrew his offensive tackle, guys. So I'm wondering if a little something was going on there. Kirk just wanted to go ahead and pad his own stats. But either way, had a good enough game. Found Kyle Pitts for a touchdown. Nearly had a second one. He got held on the play, but it wasn't really a great throw from Kirk either. So good enough stuff there. Unfortunately, not good stuff, though, from Drake London. Dwayne caught just 3 of 8 targets for 27 yards. Did not look back at 100%, which kind of begs the question what he was doing on the field at all. Of course, was day-to-day for a good month, but given the nature of PCL injuries, just didn't exactly know what we were seeing, and what we did saw was not very good. So looking ahead to next week against the Rams on Monday Night Football, I mean, maybe he's going to be a little bit healthier by then, Dwayne, but I don't love it after seeing this one. Did we at least see a full-time role from him, in terms of routes?
83%, which we were told they were going to work him back in. So not back to his normal, like 90% plus range. So I'm with you. I was watching a lot of that game as well. Didn't look quite himself, but I just probably am not going to overreact. Still had a 24% target share in the game, 8 targets. If Drake London's healthy, I'm just playing him in my fantasy lineups, unless I'm playing in a really small league where you guys, have some weird names that you would shoot over to me and be like, well, what about Drake London, versus Jamar Chase? Yes, I'm starting Jamar Chase, but in most situations like Drake London, is going to be really hard to not have out there as your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. So I wish you would have looked better, but I'm just not gonna overthink it. Dude, Bijan Robinson though, 32% target share today, 11 targets. So when everybody was like, Kirk Cousins isn't targeting Bijan Robinson. Just kidding. Yes, he is. 11 of them today. And Kyle Pitts, man, in the first game with Drake London back, still had a 27% target share, gave you guys 18.7 fantasy points in a PPR format. Bijan gave you 30.
Ballin for sure. Bijan even had another 20-yard cutback run that got nullified. Man, he just really does move differently than pretty much anyone else in that position. I just thank God every single day, Dwain, that he finished last year with 367 touches, not 370. Otherwise, we just would not be seeing this breakout season. Meanwhile, for the Cardinals, again, I messed up the intro, but yeah, Elijah Higgins somehow led this freaking team in receiving yards, guys. 91 yards, caught 7 of 8 targets. Michael Wilson caught 2 of his 3 targets. Luckily, one of those was a 32-yard touchdown that I don't even think Michael Wilson thought he caught. It reminded me of that Tyreek Hill touchdown that he actually didn't even tell him to challenge a couple years ago, but when you watch the replay, he actually did have it land on his legs. So just weird, Dwain, to see Michael Wilson. And this is one of the stats I brought up this week. Where this year, easily the 2 best receivers in contested catch situations, catching 70% of these, were Puka Nacua and Michael Wilson. How do you go 60 minutes to only get this dude 3 targets?
I don't know, man. But look, we finally get behind Jacoby Brissett. We've just kind of hedged against him the whole time. Jacoby Brissett scored 10.6 fantasy points today. He finally had his dud. The whole idea was look, man, the worst game this guy's had is 17 and a half fantasy points. And look what he just did, against 2 good defenses back to back, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Today was the day that he bombed, and the whole offense bombed with him. So the Falcons, who were a defense that was pretty good early in the year, but really was one of those teams that has basically been figured out for the last 6 to 8 games. Nobody's really been having issues with the Falcons. Well, the Birds did today. Arizona definitely did. And they took down Trey McBride, who only scored 6.7. They took down Michael Wilson, who scored 13.2, which you'll take. But to your point, he only had 3 targets today, 10% target share. Marvin Harrison Jr. gave you 2.4 fantasy points on a 10% target share. So not something where we overreact. I think you still look at Jacoby Brissett and what he's done, over the course of the season. We're going to feel good about these pass catchers next week. Hopefully you guys were able to squeak through, though, if you were having to start any of these guys. Michael Wilson, you probably end up being fine. It's not going to kill you, but Trey McBride only getting 6.7. Obviously a lot less than what we've been used to.
Had a chance at the end, man. Potential 16-yard touchdown went right through his hands, and it sure seemed like he kind of got those alligator arms seeing Jesse Bates come from. There were 3 straight plays, man, where, Jesse Bates was just all over Trey McBride. Again, one of the very best safeties in the NFL and has been for quite some time. You mentioned Marv's dud. Man, Jacoby threw him a very catchable 30-yard, just jump ball that could have been a touchdown. And just the way this dude goes up for contested catches, I don't know what it is, man, but it is just so incredibly soft for someone who obviously has such amazing God-given ability and obviously has gone on improved and had great games both in college and at professional level. So sucks to see from Marv, probably not playing at 100%, but again, I hate seeing the way he goes up for some of these contested catches, man, even while having some good games along the way. So good news, though, is the Bengals next week. So again, God forbid you have to go up against the Trey McBride, man, Jr. 3rd place matchup, guys. Get ready for that one. What, though, Dwain, did we see from the running back room before we move on? Was it still the Michael Carter show?
Yeah, 54% though of the snaps to Carter, 30% to DeMercado. So it wasn't the 70% that we talked about last week, which we talked about all week, that it'd probably be a little bit tighter, but he was still the guy in the lead role. I think Corey Kiner was out there for 16% of the snaps as well. And Kiner, man, got 6 rushing attempts. That was the surprise. There's 3 guys involved here. Carter's still the lead, but they have Corey Kiner plus Amari DeMercado involved. So Kiner had 26% of the carries, 22% for DeMercado, 48% for Michael Carter. Carter gave you 6.5 fantasy points on the day, guys. Was still the leader in route participation rate at 52%, but it was Amari DeMercado getting 100% of the 2-minute offense this week, Ian. So, It's an offense that we know can score points, but still not ideal to have 3 guys mixing in because the Cardinals throw the ball so much. I think that's going to make it tough. And today, like ultimately, there was 22 rushing attempts across them, 23 if you want to include the one that went to Jacoby Brissett, which is the game stayed pretty close, so it wasn't terrible, but they've had an 80 or 78% drop back rate, over the last 5 games. Like that could really easily not be. That could be like 5 carries for Michael Carter and 3 for Corey Kiner and 3 for DeMercado. It's not ideal.
Had a ton of start sit questions for Carter this morning. And I'm not saying, we told you guys to sit him each and every time around, but again, firmly going to stay more so in that flex RB30 conversation where, let's face it, we do get more start sit questions about those sort of toss-up guys. So still going to be, again, probably around that range, but once again, also not going to be someone to have locked in the starting lineups by any stretch of the imagination. Moving on, we had the Steelers take down the Lions 29-24 in a freaking crazy game, man. Ending was freaking nuts. Pittsburgh winning outright as 7.5-point dogs. The over did cash here at 52. So yeah, on the last play of the game, Amon-Ra St. Brown basically got called for OPI, but during that play, before we knew that, he somehow managed to lateral the ball back to Jared Goff, who found his way into the end zone, seemingly to score the game-winning touchdown, but again, not so fast, my friend. Game ended due to the OPI occurring again after the clock had already run out. But we'll talk about the victors first, and that was the Steelers, primarily thanks to the just, again, amazing performances from Jalen Warren, 143 yards, and a pair of 45-yard touchdown runs. And also Kenneth Gainwell, who also had a 45-yard touchdown. This one of the diving variety before halftime with like 2 seconds left. And I just have no idea how he caught that ball, Dwain. So again, we were talking all week, Jalen Warren or Kenneth Gainwell. Technically, the answer was Warren. He scored more points. But overall, the answer was just yes.
Yeah, just both. Look, I don't really have a lot to add. Everything we've been talking about with these two guys is still the same. Snaps are really close, 49% for Warren, 54% for Kenneth Gainwell today. Rushing attempts, slight edge to Warren, which we've talked about in the past, 56% to 36%. But more of the passing down work going to Kenneth Gainwell, 56% and 100% of the 2-minute offense. And he's obviously the guy doing the most damage with the targets. The guy had an 18% target share, another 7 targets today, Ian. So 23.8 fantasy points for Kenneth Walker today, 29.1 for Jalen Warren.
DK Metcalf only caught 4 of 9 targets for 42 scoreless yards. Did have a short touchdown nullified because Darnell Washington freaking truck stick someone, trying to run a pick, ended up getting called for OPI. But the bigger problem for Metcalf was, as I'm sure you all saw, he was shown throwing what sure looked a lot to me, Dwayne, like a punch out of fan. I'm not sure what the fans said. I'm not sure if the fans spat on him. We do not know. But what we do know, Dwayne, is that is not a good look. I would be shocked if Metcalf isn't suspended for at least one game. Any pass catchers going up against the Browns next week that you can trust? Because I sure don't see one.
Well, we haven't had Denzel Ward the last 2 games. We'll see what happens if he's available next week, for the Browns secondary. But Adam Thielen had a 40% route participation rate, an 11% target share. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 58%. You're the 2 names I just said. I think the answer is no.
And Calvin Austin got a hamstring injury. Like he would be the one guy where maybe, but no, he's hurt too.
Yeah, no, it's just we'll just take the backs and maybe one of the other tight ends get involved, but we won't know which one. We won't be able to make a recommendation on it because they're all at like a 50% route participation rate.
MVS did have a vintage MVS Rodgers moment, had a potentially awesome 50-yard touchdown. Go right off his fingertips. It wasn't a brutal drop, but of course they had to cut the camera back to Rodgers and he just had his hand, head in his hands, kneeling down at midfield. Again, just took me back to those sweet, sweet Packers days between the duo. So again, Steelers at the Browns, heck of a win though for the Steelers in the game that, I don't know about you guys, I didn't expect the exact them to win. Meanwhile, with the Lions, had almost nothing going on offense, man, until they really started getting going in comeback mode in the fourth quarter. You look at the stat sheet at the end of the game, and Jared Goff threw for 364 yards and 3 touchdowns. Did take 3 sacks, though, had a safety in there. And again, this was far from a clean performance. I think a large part because they could not run the football, man. 7 carries for just 2 yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. Honestly, it seemed like David Montgomery, who was 4 for 14, not much better, but I don't know. He was being a little more patient out there, at least on one good run. Either way, banged up offensive line, running backs not doing their thing. They could not run the ball. But hey, when we get 54 pass attempts from Goff, wound up being okay for Gibbs, who caught 10 of 13 targets for 66 yards and a score. Also saw Isaac Tesla get a touchdown and Khalif Raymond. But just wild, Dwayne. Like if you had learned before the game, fantasy football fairy comes to you, gambling fairy comes to you and says Goff is throwing for 364 and 3 touchdowns today. I'm emptying my bank account on Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown overs, and all we got from them was 70 and 54 yards.
Yeah. I mean, you'll take the 12 fantasy points you got from Williams. Obviously, if you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you've been spoiled. Let's be honest. You've been pretty spoiled by Amon-Ra St. Brown. So the 9.4 doesn't feel that good. But Jahmyr Gibbs, man, 25% target share. That's what saved him. The guy is coming into this game. He had a 24% target share in the games without Sam Laporta. So basically that number's going to hang in there. It's going to be about the same. Dude scored 22.8 fantasy points today, despite what you mentioned about the very, very low rushing total. And it all came through the fact that he got 13 targets. 10 of those turned into receptions for 66 yards, including a receiving touchdown. He had 3 targets in the red zone.
It has been tough sledding for Gibbs, though, man. He had that nuclear game against the Giants. He averaged 14.6 yards per carry on 15 rushes, which is just insane. Like, that's tough to do in a video game on like a rookie setting. And his 5 of his last 6 games, or otherwise, Dwain hasn't even been able to crack 4 yards per carry. So I think it's the banged up offensive line that we're probably not giving enough credence to with the struggles. But I think that, honestly, if you're trying to find the reason why this Lions team has been struggling to be the same beast this year, it really has been the run game more weeks than not quite being as lethal. So unfortunate, but we are going to have the Lions taking on the Vikings on Thursday. So Gibbs, Jameson, Amon-Ra, again, we're still going to feel awfully good about those matchups. That takes us to the Texans taking down the Raiders 23-21. Raiders did cover as 14-point dogs. I was one of those idiots out there wondering if it was a situation where we needed to, actively be even wondering if they could score a single touchdown in this game. They wound up scoring multiple of them. So good job by the Raiders. But again, it was the Texans getting the win. The over did cash here at 39.5. Dalton Schultz caught a wide open touchdown, kind of kicked over the goalpost. Not sure what he was doing there, but good for you. Dalton had another 15-yard catch nullified, continuing to put together a nice season. Nico Collins only 59 scoreless yards. They have a bunch of unrealized air yards. Had a sweet long dive and catch to ice it, but a disappointing performance, Dwain, overall for a Texans offense that we expected to crush because they did get a Derek Stingley pick 6 to help, put this one out.
Yeah, I mean, look, it happens. It's just unfortunate that it happened in this game for you. Nico Collins gave you 9.9 fantasy points, and dude, he had to make a great catch on the sideline late in the game, like to even get you up to the 9.9. And it was in a kind of a weird scenario where they were honestly just trying to get another first down so they could basically go into the victory formation, and it ended up being a long pass down the sideline where Nico gets both of his feet in. You get one more extra catch with some extra yardage there. It would have been even worse for Nico. So I think the big story here, Ian, is honestly the backfield. And we did not have Woody Marks in this contest. And it was Jawar Jordan, again, leading the way. 12 fantasy points. He had 46% of the snaps. He handled 65% of the rushing attempts. 15 carries for Jordan versus 6 for Nick Chubb. Dare Ogunbowale doing a little bit in the passing game, but he only had 1 carry. So if we get another game now where we know that we're not going to have Woody Marks, I think we have to project Jawar Jordan as the lead back. Obviously, may not give him like 65% of the carries, but probably project 55 to 60% to him. And to be honest, Ian, he's looked okay. Only 3.5 yards per carry today, but he had a couple of decent little runs, given how the problems that we have with the Texans offensive line.
Nick Chubb actually had a cool 30-yard run, but then he also got hawked down by Max Crosby 30 yards downfield, and it was like, oh yeah,
that was the highlight they showed. They're like, hey, look at this neat run by Nick Chubb.
But really, look at Max Crosby running him down.
Look where he starts this play and he runs him down. Yeah,
and it was freaky, man. Crosby again, one of the very best players in the NFL, regardless of position. So again, we'll keep an eye on the Woody Marks injury. It sounded like, it was kind of like a game time decision sort of thing. I don't. Mm-hmm. A Texans reporter was saying that he was planning on playing. I don't doubt that was the plan. So kudos to, the Rap Sheets and Schefters of the world for letting us know that he would not be playing before that 1 p.m. lock. So again, guys, only a couple games left. Really do need to do everything in your power to hopefully not be starting guys like Woody Marks when we have the opportunity to find out before. But things happen. You got families, you got responsibilities. So unfortunate if that did apply to you. So again, Texans will be facing on the Chargers on Saturday night. Before we turn things over to the Raiders, though, it is time for our DraftKings closing lines. Shout out to our friends over at DraftKings. Wanted to give them some love. Big games, big moments, and even bigger upside this week. I teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6 to give you a new way to get in on the action. With Pick 6, you ride the upside by making simple predictions. Will players score more or less than the number listed? You put your picks together, and the more you hit, the bigger your payout. And right now, guys, there's an incredible offer. New DraftKings Pick 6 customers play $5 or more on your first pick set and get $50 in bonus picks. That's right. New customers play $5 on your first entry, and you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. So So don't miss your shot to ride the upside. Download DraftKings Pick 6, get on all the action, and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. Thanks to DraftKings Pick 6 for sponsoring this. Let's make the season one to remember. All freaking week, Dwain, I agonize over Ashton Jeanty, as I'm sure all the rest of you did. And what did he do? Return his best performance of the season. The 3 touchdowns against the Bears were nice, but come on, at that point in the season, we knew that Bears defense to be one of the worst groups in the NFL. 128 rushing yards and a long touchdown. Also caught a 60-yard receiving touchdown where he just ran right past the poor soul. Tasked with trying to keep up with him in the open field. That long touchdown run, Dwain, was his first run of 15-plus yards since the Bears game that happened all the way back in week 4. So again, 31.8 PPR points. Last 3 games combined, 26.1. I think it's a good example to trust the utilization, even when it makes you want to freaking pull your brains out, dude.
Dude, I know. Man, it's yeah. So if you look at the 2 long plays that he had, I mean, that's over 100 yards, just between those 2 plays.
And he made them.
Yeah, and he made them. So, yeah. Look, he's a good player. He's a very talented player, but this also just shows you the variance involved with fantasy football, guys. You're coming in, you're playing the Texans. What was the team total on this, Ian, for the Raiders? I think 11.5 points coming.
Maybe it got to 11.75. Yeah, that's what we're.
And Friedman's model had it even lower. So I'm just going to blame Friedman and Friedman's model because I think Friedman's like going to get to probably hang out and ski or something tomorrow while you and I are just grinding away in our mom's basement. Good players making good plays for the Raiders today. And Ashton Jeanty's one of those. Brock Bowers was the other one. He came through with 14.3 fantasy points. Not the boom that Ashton Jeanty had with 31.8. But yes, Ian, this is a very good example of why we do follow the utilization because it does typically lead us towards fantasy points. But I have to say, I mean, we'd had multiple weeks of getting the workload and not getting the points with Jeanty. So I don't blame people, which I was one of them as well, that moved Jeanty down the ranks this week. So it happens.
It's going to haunt me all offseason, Dwain, for a couple
definitely
of
haunt
teams.
Us.
But
we benched him on a couple teams.
Yeah, I thought it made sense. But again, the big thing for me was just these last 3 weeks. All the percentages were always there, and that was fine. But the stat I was rolling with was like they had run 7 fewer total plays per game than the next worst team because they just couldn't stay on the field. So if I would knew or just, again, had any level of hope that Geno could have thrown for 200 yards like he did today, would have been feeling better about it. But alas, I was a big freaking idiot and was wrong on that. So they mentioned the pick 6 of Stingley, but otherwise it was a clean game from Geno, man. Only took 3 sacks. Like we've seen games where he takes 9 or 10 sacks. So, hey, maybe, I mean, I don't think this Texans defense is overrated, Dwain. We have seen back-to-back offenses in the, Las Vegas Raiders and the Arizona Cardinals perform much better than expected. And I don't know, man, that Bills offense isn't exactly, looking like a world-beating group. Maybe they're a little overrated. I don't really think so, but that's my only guess.
But again, I think the thing to do with the Texans is look at the larger sample, and they've been a good defense over the entire sample. We've had other games like this where earlier in the year where they gave up some points to some offenses we didn't think that they should, and they ended up turning around and bouncing back and being fine. So I'm not going to worry about it, too much as far as thinking their defense is overrated, but it just shows you. And look, the NFL is a game, Ian, that's really rigged to the offenses, right? I mean, all the offensive pass interference calls, all the hits on the quarterback, all that kind of stuff is geared to keeping drives moving. And the Texans have done a really good job, this year. I still think they're a very good defense. It's just, had a rough day at the office.
I think maybe the mistake I made was just the eye test for the Texans is terrifying because they are just so ferocious. They're so fast and they just hit, I think, more physically than any other group in the league. But if you take that away, and if you're someone who doesn't even watch football, I think maybe you will look at this matchup a little less concerned. But then again, we go back to them being implied to score under 12 freaking points. So sometimes great players are going to make great plays, and that's what Ashton Jeanty did today. So anything else they're doing? Tyler Lockett had a wrist injury, but look, they're facing the Giants next week, but come on, other than Powers and Jeanty, what are we doing here?
No, yeah, exactly. Like Jack Bash, 69% route participation, but nice. Like you guys aren't going to start him. Exactly. Nice. Whatever. I mean, it's Brock Bowers, it's Ashton Jeanty, then that's it.
Bash had a nice catch and run out there, but yeah, we'll talk to you about
kind of sparked the offense. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So Pete Carroll apparently maybe not going to be back. Maybe Tom Brady just grabs the headset. Maybe Tom Brady grabs the helmet too. We'll see what happens here in 2026. But guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the Fantasy Live Show. Make sure you check out Dwain's utilization report. It will be live tomorrow. I'll also have my early Week 17 rankings out as well. We are not going anywhere. I know it's Christmas week, and I hope you guys certainly do enjoy the holidays. But we'll be back with shows throughout the week, getting those rankings updated and getting you the information you need to hopefully take home that championship banner. So for Dwain, for producer Mick, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. Get ready for those fantasy championships. And until next time, take care, everybody.